Oh, welcome to Saratoga. You are standing at the corner of Big Basin Way and Saratoga Los Gatos Road. Behind you, hills. In front of you, a mile of old storefronts, some of them older than the state of California. Most people drive through this town without a second thought. I am going to walk you through it. By the end, you will know things about Saratoga that almost nobody who lives here knows. Let me establish a little context before we start walking. To establish is to set something up solidly. From the Latin stabilire, from stabilis, stable, related to stable, stability, and staff. To establish a town is to drive the stakes in and declare it permanent. Context means the surrounding circumstances, the setting in which something happens. From the Latin contextus, meaning woven together. Context is the weave around the moment. In 1851, California had been a state for less than a year. The gold rush was still roaring in the Sierra. Down here, the valley was farmland, orchards, grass. Then up in these hills behind us, something every pioneer town needed. Big trees. That is the first thing to know about Saratoga. Before it was a town, it was a sawmill. A man named Martin McCarty built a toll road up into those hills in 1850. He used the road to haul redwood logs down to a sawmill at the base of the creek. The settlement that grew around his sawmill was called, naturally, McCartysville. Here's an anecdote about McCarty himself. An anecdote is a short true story, usually a small one. From the Greek anecdota, the not given out. Originally, anecdotes were private stories that had not been published. Now the word just means any small story worth telling. McCarty was, by all accounts, affable, easy to talk to, friendly to strangers, the kind of person who would invite a traveler to dinner. Affable means friendly, warm, good-natured. From the Latin affabilis, to speak. Someone affable is someone you can easily speak to, but he was also a businessman. His toll road was a vocation, not just a service. He collected a fee from every wagon that climbed it. A vocation is a calling, the work you feel called to do, from the Latin vocar, to call. The same root runs through a whole family of words: vocal, advocate, invoke, revoke, provocation, and vociferous. For 10 years, McCartysville was a sawmill town. Lumber went down the hill, money went up to Martin McCarty, and then in 1865, something happened that changed the name of the town forever. Someone discovered that the creek running through town had mineral springs along it. These were Congress Springs, sparkling, slightly sulfurous, very drinkable if you could get past the smell. And this is where the story becomes a case of serendipity. Serendipity is the luck of finding valuable things you were not looking for. It is one of the youngest words in the English language. Walpole was reading an old Persian fairy tale called The Three Princes of Serendip. Serendip being the old Persian name for Sri Lanka. The princes in the story kept stumbling on clues and treasures without searching for them. Walpole built a new word from the story's title. McCarty's sawmill town had accidentally become a mineral springs town, a 19th century spa. And here's the twist. In upstate New York, there was already a famous resort town built around mineral springs. It was called Saratoga Springs. Travelers who had visited both said the California springs tasted almost identical. That was an apt comparison. Apt means suitable, fitting, well chosen. From the Latin aptus, fit for. The same root gave us adept. In 1865, the townspeople voted to rename McCartysville to Saratoga, after the New York springs that the California springs resembled. Though Saratoga, California was distinct from Saratoga, New York in almost every other way, the water tasted the same. Distinct means separate, clearly different. From the Latin distinctus, to mark off. Two things are distinct when you can tell them apart, and that is how the town got its name. Let me digress for just a moment, because the orchard era is where Saratoga becomes the place most old-timers remember. To digress is to wander off the main topic, is to step aside, from the Latin degredi, apart, plus gradi, to walk. The root gradi is a treasure, gradient, progress, regress, aggression, degrade. Anything that moves step by step shares this root. For 60 years, from about 1880 to 1940, the Santa Clara Valley was the largest fruit-growing region in the world. Farmers cultivated tens of thousands of acres of prune, apricot, and cherry trees. It was known as the Valley of Heart's Delight. You drive along Saratoga Avenue today, and every once in a while, you see a lone apricot tree on someone's front lawn. That is a vestige, a remnant, a surviving trace of the orchard era. The orchard farmers were sanguine about the future. Sanguine means optimistic, hopeful, cheerful. From the Latin sanguis, meaning blood. In medieval medicine, people believed the body had 4 humors. A sanguine person had a bit more blood and was thought to be warm, cheerful, and hopeful. The root sanguis also gives us consanguineous, related by blood, as in family, and sanguinary, which means bloody. And the orchardists had reason to be sanguine. Prunes sold well, apricots sold well. The valley was beautiful. The air was warm. Every May the whole ground turned pink with blossoms. A few of the houses from that era are still standing along Saratoga Sunnyvale Road, venerable Victorians that have watched the whole valley change. These old buildings foster the sense that you are walking through more than 1 decade at once. So, that is part 1 of our walk. We have passed from a sawmill town named after a man to a spa town named after sparkling water, to an orchard valley named the Valley of Heart's Delight. If you meander the streets here, you are walking through 3 Saratogas layered on top of each other. In part 2, we will meet the characters, a senator who built a castle, a Japanese garden that survived a world war, a winery on top of the mountain, and an earthquake that cracked the foundations of all of it. 15 words. Lock them in. Establish. To set up on a firm basis. Root. Stabilis. Latin. Stable. Context. The surrounding setting. Root. Contextus. Woven together. Anecdote. A short true story. Root. Greek anecdota. Not given out. Affable. Friendly. Easy to talk to. Root. Phari. To speak. Vocation, a calling. Root, vocary, to call. Serendipity, lucky discovery. From Horace Walpole's 3 Princes of Serendip, Ep20, fitting, suitable. Root, aptus, fit, distinct, clearly different. Root, distinguere, to mark off. Digress, to wander off topic. Root, gradi, to walk. Sanguine, cheerfully optimistic. Root, sanguis, blood. +5 you already know, used today in context. Cultivate, meander, vestige, venerable, and foster. Hold at this corner for a moment. In part 2, we walk up the hill. Welcome back. In part 1, we walked Big Basin Way and learned how the town got its name. Now we are going to climb. Out of the village, up into the hills, because that is where the characters lived. Our first stop is a mansion called Villa Montalvo. It sits on 175 acres of oak-covered hillside. It was built in 1912 by James Duval Phelan, a 3-term U.S. senator and former mayor of San Francisco. When his political career ended, he retreated here. Phelan loved writers and artists. He filled Villa Montalvo with them. He wanted to spend his retirement among people who spoke with candor. Candor means openness, honesty, frankness, from the Latin candor, meaning whiteness or brightness. The Romans connected whiteness with purity and purity with honest speech. Someone speaking with candor speaks clearly, without hiding anything. Phelan left Villa Montalvo as a place to foster artists, painters, poets, novelists. Nearly 100 years later, it still works that way. Writers go there to write for a few weeks at a time. Let me be concise about why this matters. Concise means brief but complete. From the Latin considere, conius, together, plus caedere, to cut. Anything concise has been cut down to just what it needs. A town of Saratoga's size does not normally have an artist's retreat supported by a senator's estate. Saratoga does. The historical record of who has written what in those oak cottage retreats is remarkable. Our next stop is a 5-minute walk farther up the hill, Hakone Gardens. This is the oldest Japanese-style residential garden in the Western Hemisphere, built in 1915 by Isabel Stein. She had visited a real Japanese tea garden in Tokyo and wanted one of her own. She hired Naoharu Aihara, who designed the place. The gardens today are tranquil in a way that surprises first-time visitors. But there is a darker chapter in their history, and I want to tell it honestly. Because Saratoga's history is not all succinct happy endings. Succinct means brief and compact, from the Latin susingere, sub, under, plus singere, to gird or to belt. In 1941, after Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government began incarcerating Japanese Americans in internment camps. Any property owned by a Japanese person could be seized. Hakone, at that point, was owned by a Japanese American family. A neighbor, recognizing the danger, quietly moved in and claimed ownership of the gardens, holding them on paper throughout the war. Many Japanese gardens across California were destroyed during that period. Hakone survived. In the decades after, the city of Saratoga bought the gardens and restored them. The relationship between the city and Japan has been conciliatory ever since. Conciliatory means tending toward peace, toward healing a conflict, from the Latin conciliare, to unite, and concilium, a council. The sister-to-city bond between Saratoga and Mukoshi, Japan, has run without interruption for 40 years. The gardens are one reason. The whole story is profound in a way that is easy to miss on a casual visit. Further up the hill, a winery. Paul Masson was a Frenchman who arrived in the Santa Clara Valley in 1878. By 1905, he had built a stone chateau. The stone came from the 1906 earthquake ruins of an old San Jose building. Masson bought the rubble and dragged it up the hill. Masson himself was a charismatic figure. He named his own champagne after himself and ran grand dinners at the mountain chateau for decades. The winery still operates as a concert venue today. Summer nights at Mountain Winery are unforgettable. Speaking of 1906, let me back up to the earthquake because it shaped everything that came after. It was formidable. 7.9 on the Richter scale. San Francisco burned for 3 days. Saratoga, 60 miles south, shook hard. Brick chimneys came down. Old wooden homes leaned off their foundations. Several of Saratoga's earliest buildings did not survive. The residents had to revise their plans for the town. To revise is to look again and change. From the Latin revidere, again plus videre, to see. They revised and rebuilt. The town proved resilient, rebuilt on top of its own ruins and busier 10 years later. Some historians embellish the recovery story to make it more dramatic than it was. Embellish has two meanings, to decorate or to exaggerate, from the Latin bellus, meaning beautiful. Saratoga recovered. It did not do anything heroic. It just kept planting orchards, selling fruit, and hosting weddings. By the 1960s, the orchards were being sold to developers. Tract homes replaced the apricot trees one block at a time. Saratoga became a suburb, but an unassuming one. Unassuming means modest, not putting on airs. The root is the Latin sumere, to take up. Saratoga did not build glass towers. It did not chase Silicon Valley headlines. It stayed quiet, kept the old buildings, kept the trees. The result, a generation later, is a town that is winsome in a very specific way. Winsome means charming, appealing. The word is Old English, from win, joy, and hake, summon, producing. Saratoga is winsome. The old buildings are original. The village is walkable. The hills are full of history nobody advertises. If you stop long enough at a coffee shop, you will end up in a conversation with a local who turns out to be garrulous. Garrulous means very talkative, often about small things, from the Latin garrire, to chatter. And somehow the town has kept arriving at propitious moments at just the right time. A lucky discovery of springs, a lucky naming, a lucky neighbor who saved Hakone. Propitious means favorable, full of promise. From the Latin propitious, meaning favorable or kind. Saratoga has had more propitious moments than a town its size should have had. 3 Saratogas stacked on top of each other. The sawmill town, the spring water town, the orchard town, and underneath all of them, the quiet village you can still walk through today. 30 words, 20 new, 10 review, lock them in. From part 1, establish, context, anecdote, affable, vocation, serendipity, apte, distinct, digress, sanguine. From part 2, candor, concise, succinct, conciliatory, profound, revise, embellish, unassuming, winsome, garrulous, propitious, plus 10 you already know, used today in context, cultivate, meander, vestige, venerable, foster, tranquil, profound, formidable, resilient, and charismatic. If this walk showed you a town you thought you knew, subscribe for a new episode every week. And next time you drive through Saratoga, park the car. Walk up Big Basin Way, you will notice things you never did before.